WVEC TV, plan.
Time for one claim or two, and here we go.
This is Jeff Day, ABC News.
Tonight on Focus, the greatest storm on Earth. Nature's most violent show of strength, a hurricane can build a moving wall of water 20 feet high. If one moves in on our coastline full force, billions of dollars worth of property will be destroyed. Worse, thousands of people could die because they can't get out. Also tonight, a visit to Berkeley Plantation. It's a place steeped in tradition, one of the most historical places in our history-rich state. Making sure Berkeley's present lives up to its past is one man's life's work. This fellow has more than a tradition to uphold. He supported generations of children while they rode the merry-go-round. The Buckrow Beach Ride is a valuable antique now, but that isn't why it matters.
I'm Jane Gardner. Eastern Virginia could be right in the path of a major hurricane this summer, and that could be a major disaster. In a moment, we'll look at what would happen to Hampton Roads in a hurricane. The national news this past week has been full of disaster. Freak weather bringing storms and tornadoes to Louisiana and Michigan. Some freak weather could be headed this way this summer. Sometime in August or September or October, we're likely to get a visit from somebody named Charlie or Danielle or Earl. These are some of the names selected for this year's hurricanes. And when that violent hurricane threatens to drop by, we'll try to keep you posted on its progress. And even with the help of the National Weather Service, the forecasters won't be able to accurately. If a storm hits here this hurricane season, with the force of the 1749 storm that formed Willoughby Spit or the 1933 storm that killed 18 people, we have a big problem. There are more of us now to be hurt, much more property to be damaged when the hurricane hits.
Hurricanes are death and destruction, and the most important aspect of the hurricane is the storm surge. Everybody knows that hurricanes are wind, everybody knows that hurricanes are rain, but most people are not aware that the most devastating aspect of the hurricane is the storm surge. That's an immediate coastal problem.
An immediate coastal problem means hurricane season is our problem. From now until November, radar screens will be showing, and weather stations tracking, the big storms that have people's names, personalities even, and are, like some people, remembered for the evil things they do.
Storm surge is a dome of water that sweeps across the coastline. Now, it's not an individual wave. A lot of people say, yeah, I know what that is. It's just a tidal wave, and it comes and it goes, you know. That's not what a storm surge is. A storm surge is a dome of water. That's the best way I could describe it. And then superimposed on that dome are these horrendous waves. If we could go to the coastline today and raise the water level 10 feet along the entire area of Virginia Beach, and then put 10-foot waves on top of it, that's what I mean by storm surge. 9 out of 10 people who die in a hurricane drowned in the storm surge.
During the hurricane season, Dr. Neil Frank will be keeping track of the storm's paths and using all the modern technology the National Weather Service has to do it, to try to give people enough warning to get out of the way of this wall of death.
We have got too many people in some of these offshore barrier islands for them to get out on the existing roadways that we have. Now, historically in this country and in other countries, if you live along the coastline and a bad hurricane is coming, the thing you should do is to get in your car and get back to high ground. But we don't have the roadway systems to permit that to take place today. And we're continuing to put more and more people in these vulnerable locations without really addressing the question of how are we going to get them out, or what are we going to do to make sure that their lives are safe. Look, I'm not negative about living in the beautiful islands that we have offshore. I'm not negative about going down to the Outer Banks and living. It's a great way of life. If you choose to go there to live, you must know that hurricanes are a problem. Hurricane preparedness is not an option if you choose to live there. It's a necessity.
But it may not help much if your community isn't prepared. The National Weather Service has maps of evacuation routes. But when you consider that this one shows much of Virginia Beach underwater in a major hurricane, you can see that getting its 280,000 residents, plus thousands of tourists, out in time would take a pretty good plan. So each time hurricane season begins, Dr. Neil Frank issues a warning. He is a voice of doom, speaking to civil defense and emergency workers in communities all along the coast. His audience has heard it all before, so they aren't exactly biting their nails with worry, but the reminder is helpful.
One of the points that I would like to make to you here is we travel along the coastline. Yeah, we're well aware of New Orleans and the terrible problem we've got there. And we're well aware of the Jersey coast and the terrible problem we've got there. Yeah, I'm aware of the Tampa Bay area and the problem we got there. But how many smaller problems like you're describing here with Ocracoke, where it's maybe 300 people or 400 people that are trapped there? Or I understand up the island east of Chincoteague, what's that, Assateague, right? I understand somebody was telling me on the north end, in the park up on the north end of Assateague there, that you get canoeists that take off and maybe spend a week or so canoeing. Well, how do you get a hold of 100 canoeists moving along down in there, even if you knew with 12 hours of lead time?
12 hours isn't a lot of warning if you're trying to pack up a city full of people who are slow to realize that there's any danger.
No, we're not getting out.
Well then, would you give me the names of your next of kin?
Say, you're serious about this, aren't you?
Mister, I've never been more serious in my life.
Martha, let's pack up.
Come in. Welcome to the hurricane party.
We tend to ignore the possibility of danger when that danger is a relatively rare event. Now, bad hurricanes in Virginia are relatively rare events. Therefore, we tend to ignore the possibility that they want to come. Hey, you know, we're just going to deny the reality of it, and then we'll go about our daily lifestyle and go about our daily chores and just not become concerned about it. And the longer we go without a hurricane, the more it's confirmed to us, well, I was right all along, we really don't have a problem with them. Hey, that's not so.
The last major hurricane to kill people in Virginia didn't even reach the coast. But what Hurricane Camille did to the valleys of the Blue Ridge is hard to ignore.
It's bound to be in here somewhere because all these are the houses that came from in this vicinity. They're all right in here, in this neighborhood. But mine is right there on the corner and I don't even see it. That grave in yonder, that's mine.
But that was back in 1969. Surely Dr. Frank's people at the National Hurricane Center in Miami have learned since then. Improved technology, satellites, planes, computers must have improved forecasting.
No, absolutely not. Unfortunately not, I guess is the way that I'd like to put it. We need to be getting better because of the tremendous pressures that is coming on us to get better. But we're not. We looked at our trends over the last quarter of a century. The decade of the 50s, on into the 60s, we were experiencing some improvement. There's been a leveling out, though, and over the last 10 years, we have not improved significantly. And I don't anticipate a significant improvement in the next 10 years, which only increases the problem because of the new people that are going to the coastline. They really demand longer lead times for the evacuation, and my skill is not improving so that I'm able to provide that kind of lead time. We're going to strive to give you 10 to 12 hours of lead time, but we may not always be able to do that. If you have a hurricane like the 1954 storm, Hazel, or the 1938 hurricane that went on into New England, where they were storms off the Bahamas, moving along very slowly, and all of a sudden they turn north and begin to accelerate quite rapidly in their forward speed. The 38 storm, for example, past the Virginia is doing about 50 miles an hour. Now, if that kind of a sequence would take place, we might only be able to give you, say, 3, 4, 5 hours of notice. And that's just not adequate to get everybody back to high ground.
That's frightening, but the voice of doom has just begun the warning.
We're in for what I fear may be a tremendous disaster one of these days. If we have a repeat of one of these great storms in some of our vulnerable locations, we could easily lose more lives than we lost in Galveston, Texas in 1900, the scene of the worst disaster we've ever had in the United States. We lost 6,000 lives in 1900. And I'm here to tell you that unless we move forward much more rapidly with planning than I see taking place today, that we might have a historical storm sometime in the near future that would claim more lives than the Galveston storm in 1900.
As Neil Frank travels the country warning people, he takes time to look around, and what he sees worries him.
I do a lot of traveling, and anytime I get an opportunity to take a few minutes, I go down to the coastline and I pose as a property buyer. Now, I don't do that to be nasty or to, dredge up bad stories. I do that because I think it's important that I know what you've been told when you went to buy your property, so when I post the warnings, I know how you're going to react. And for the most part, people are not being told the seriousness of the hurricane problem. No question about that. I've been in coastal developments from Texas to Maine, and very seldom do the salesmen give me an honest sales talk or honest information about the vulnerability of the hurricane. So we got all kinds of people. They're from the Midwest or up in the factories in Detroit, saved a little money during their lifetime, come down to the coastline. Now they're going to enjoy the Outer Banks, or they're going to enjoy Virginia Beach, or they're going to enjoy the Eastern Shores or someplace. They go in and they go to go to buy their property. First question, they ask, hey, what about a hurricane? This looks pretty vulnerable. Been reading about all those bad things all my life. I read about the 38 storm that hit New England, and I read about Hazel in 1954 that devastated Wilmington, North Carolina. Do you have a problem here? And for the most part, they're told, no, we're building our houses according to code, or there's all kinds of good reasons why they don't have a hurricane problem. They've invested their money, and then they don't know. I come along then some years later, post a hurricane warnings, say you need to get out, and they said, obviously it doesn't apply to me. My real estate agent told us that we didn't have a problem here. We've grown bigger. We're encroaching upon some of these offshore islands that are quite vulnerable to hurricanes. We have not given proper attention to some of the laws of nature. See, I'm convinced that if we would learn to live in harmony with nature, we could minimize our problems. If you go to California and build your house on a fault line, don't fuss about earthquakes. Earthquakes have a right to be there. And if you come to North Carolina and build your house on the offshore barrier islands there, then don't fuss about hurricanes, because I think hurricanes have a right to pass that coastline. Whether we as individuals and man have a right to go out there and live or not, I think maybe that might be questionable.
From Jamestown to Cumberland Gap, Virginia is a state of history. Just about every crossroads can claim some significance in the birth and growth of America, and there are some places that have watched it all. Berkeley Plantation on the James River is one such place. One of Berkeley's claims to historical significance is that the first Thanksgiving really happened there instead of in New England. But maybe even better than that is the fact that it is still a working plantation, though now we call it a farm, and is still, as it was when John Miller visited a couple of years ago, when this next report was first aired, home to some of Virginia's gentle people. The man who lives there calls Berkeley Plantation a good life's work.
This is Berkeley Plantation, the most historic of all plantations along the James River. It's said these walls contain more history than any other building in the Old Dominion. It is the home of the signer of the Declaration, birthplace of one president, ancestral home of another. Indeed, the first 10 presidents of the United States have been entertained on these grounds. Berkeley's proudest claim is dated December 4th, 1619, the day 38 settlers from England's Berkeley Castle landed here and immediately dropped to their knees to offer prayers of thanksgiving for their safe voyage, 1 year and 17 days before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth. These are not the flames to warm the manor house, but they help provide another warmth. In 1621, George Thorpe, an Episcopal minister, made the first bourbon whiskey at Berkeley. It became so popular the settlers preferred it to English ale. Thorpe wrote, "The people here are not sick in body, but sick in mind, and 2 drinks a day of this fiery water made things all right." 1 year later, in 1622, Indian nations devised a plan to wipe out the colonists. They struck Berkeley at noon, killing everyone except a small boy, Willie Tracy. He was later found by an Indian and sold. His descendants still live in Virginia. But the plantation was ruined and never recovered for some 70 years. In 1691, the plantation was acquired by the Harrisons. Benjamin Harrison III built a shipyard on the land. An 18-gun ship was built here for the American Navy during the Revolution. It was also during that war the house was plundered, possessions burned, and 40 slaves carried off. The man responsible, British General Benedict Arnold. It was a later war that brought more recognition to Berkeley. In 1862, General George McClellan brought the Army of the Potomac here. 140,000 men camped out on the grounds. President Lincoln visited here twice, and after the meetings, he fired McClellan for failing to pursue Robert E. Lee. It was during that encampment General Daniel Butterfield composed taps on the back of an envelope. It was first played at Berkeley by Butterfield's bugler, O.W. Norris. Following the Civil War, the plantation fell into disrepair until it was purchased in 1928. It is now owned by Malcolm Jameson, and he's just as colorful as the history the place holds. How did your father come to own this place?
I suppose because he got interested in it when he was a drummer boy here with McClellan's army. There were 140,000 men, and he was the drummer boy that ended up owning it. Actually, he was an engineer. He knew there was timber down here, so in 1907 he bought it for the timber. He didn't know much about the history except that it was McClellan's headquarters and President Harrison's birthplace. That was all he knew about it.
When he bought it, it was really a steal, I would imagine.
Well, then 25,000 was a lot of money in those days, I suppose, compared with the money today with inflation as it is now. And at the interest rate from that time on, if it didn't compound, it would be up in the hundreds of thousands of dollars if he'd invested in something else. But the house was completely abandoned, dilapidated. People said you couldn't live in it. And it needed a lot of repair work done on it, but basically it was so well built. The porches, were added to it, and someone had painted it with red bond paint. The windows were broken. It was full of rats. They kept sheep in the basement. So it got in very bad repair, but basically it was so well built that we were able to bring it back to its original condition.
We were walking down a lane that George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, indeed the first 10 presidents of the United States walked down. When you're upstairs in your bedroom, do you ever think about all the different presidents and important people that have stayed here?
It is interesting to think that so many famous early Americans did come to Berkeley. Berkeley, of course, was the seat of hospitality in those days, and with Benjamin Harrison being a sign of the Declaration of Independence and the closest friend that George Washington had, he naturally attracted a great many of the interesting people here.
In addition to the people of the history books, there have been other people that have come to Berkeley.
Yes, we've had a lot of interesting characters, I guess, and actresses and that sort of thing. I can think of some people like Doris Day and Margaret Truman and Madame Tito. There was an interesting little story about Madame Tito. She'd never had any bourbon whiskey before she came here to Berkeley, and of course you know the first bourbon was made here by an Episcopal preacher, so we brought out our 100 proof Berkeley 100 bourbon, and after 1 or 2 drinks, she said, "You're not going to let your son shoot my son, are you?" She was feeling that Berkeley 100 proof whiskey a little bit.
Berkeley has had so much history happen here, and now you are the man in 1977 that keeps this place up. How does it feel to manage a plantation like this one?
I just feel like there's a lot of work to be done here. It's interesting to see the results of your work. I always say that Berkeley owns me. I don't own Berkeley, and I'm just a tenant here for a while, and we're hoping to improve it so that the next generation will carry on the improvement and make it practically perfect as it was in the early days of the Harrisons.
I would imagine that since you bought Berkeley, you have spent thousands upon thousands of dollars to improve the place.
Well, we made all of that money ourselves from the place, with the exception of the money that I did inherit, but I had to buy relatives out. There were 13 descendants. I had to wrangle it away from 12 other people, so it left me very little to work with except what I could make the place pay. And we've diversified. We've have the visitors come to Berkeley, and we have the crops, boxwood, and very many different angles of making money on Berkeley. But it has all gotten now to the point where people are beginning to appreciate it and thanking us for doing it, and that's a great deal, get a great deal of pleasure out of that.
You enjoy doing this. You like being a farmer, don't you?
Oh, I wouldn't be anything else. I couldn't stand behind a desk. I have something to show at the end of my life, probably, instead of some paper in a safe deposit box. I know the government's going to be after my son, large inheritance tax. That's the one thing we regret a great deal, that the place might be broken up one of these days. That's the serious thing that we have to think about a lot before the time, and he has to pay that inheritance tax. In fact, he can't afford to let me die at this point.
You love Berkeley.
Oh, a great deal. It's part of it. And we've worked very nicely together. Berkeley, I think, needed someone that would work for it, with it, and I needed Berkeley for a good life's job.
There's something hard to explain about the subject of this story. That something is its attraction. It is an amusement park ride that doesn't go very fast or fly very high or frighten anybody over the age of 6, but there's something about the merry-go-round that's hard to resist. This particular merry-go-round is a valuable antique. The Buckrow Beach Amusement Park could probably use the money that would come from selling it. They could probably replace it with a bright, shiny, high-flying, fast ride and have plenty of money left over. They won't, because this old horse ride is a carousel of memories.
There are approximately about 300 carousels in existence in the United States. There are probably about 150 top quality machines, of which this is considered one. I can really appreciate the fact that somebody was able to take a block of wood and carve something as beautiful as one of these merry-go-round horses out of it. These particular horses were carved by a gentleman named Frank Coretta, who came over from Italy as a young man. He had worked in Europe in furniture factories, which most of the great wood carvers of that period had done. And he had quite a feeling for the equine anatomy. And this was probably one of the greatest works that he had done in looking at the chariots that he had carved, the horses that he had carved. They have a particular style that is known only to him. And those people who are interested in carousels, especially antique carousels such as this one, would recognize the work as being some of his. It's quite valuable. We were talking to some people last week who had been to a recent auction where they were selling a partial carousel, and the horses were selling for about $5,000 apiece. Of course, to us, you could never put any monetary value on something like this. It will always remain as part of Buckrow Beach Amusement Park, because we all get a kick out of seeing the adults, older adults, who rode this as children, and the younger children coming down to look at it and oftentimes just sit out on a bench and listen to the band organ. Band organ had developed throughout the period from a cylinder organ, which only played 7 or 8 songs, and once the cylinder was cast, you could not change the music at that time. This is basically a computerized system where you have perforized holes on a tape, and you have the ability to change the tape, and we can play anywhere from 16 to 20 songs at a time. And you can sit back and look at these people and just see the memories registering in their minds as to the great times that they had when they were younger, and also the times and anticipating the times that the younger people are going to have on it. Being able to participate in maintaining something like this makes it very special to all of us who work here.
Next week, we'll look at VEPCO's time of use program, where utility customers are charged according to when they use electricity. Some people say it's a way to save money. Others say they're washing clothes in the middle of the night and still paying more for electricity. I'm Jane Gardner. Join us next week when 13 News puts your world in focus.